For 35 years, my wife and I had a perfect marriage, or so I thought. Then she died suddenly, and I found a box of letters she'd written to me but never gave me. One each year on our anniversary. Each describing the same event from her perspective, a moment that changed everything between us, though I never noticed. Now I'm questioning everything I thought I knew about our life together. My name is Edward Warner. I'm 67 years old, and until 6 months ago, I believed I had lived a charmed life. A successful career as a civil engineer, 2 wonderful children, 4 grandchildren, and most importantly, a 35-year marriage to my college sweetheart, Catherine, that was as close to perfect as any relationship could be. Or so I thought. Catherine died suddenly last spring, a brain aneurysm that took her without warning. One moment we were making plans for our upcoming anniversary trip to Maine, the next I was planning her funeral. The shock of her loss left me hollow, going through the motions of grief but not truly feeling it. My children, Michael and Sarah, came home with their families. We held the service. People brought casseroles. Life continued in that strange, muffled way it does after such a profound rupture. It wasn't until 3 months after her death that I finally found the courage to go through her belongings. Her clothes still hung in our closet, her reading glasses still perched on her nightstand, her gardening gloves still draped over the hook by the back door. Each item a small monument to her absence. Sarah offered to help, but this was something I needed to do myself. A final act of intimacy between husband and wife. I started with her dresser, carefully folding sweaters and scarves into boxes for donation. In the back of her top drawer, tucked beneath her winter gloves, I found a small wooden box I'd never seen before. It was beautifully crafted, with a delicate floral pattern inlaid on the lid, the kind of thing Catherine would have loved, with her appreciation for handmade objects. Inside were 35 envelopes, neatly stacked and tied with a blue ribbon. Each one was addressed to me in Catherine's elegant handwriting, dated with a different year, one for each anniversary of our marriage, starting with the first and ending with our last, the 35th, just 2 months before she died. With trembling hands, I untied the ribbon and picked up the first envelope. It was dated June 12, 1987, 1 year after our wedding. The paper had yellowed slightly with age, but the seal was intact. None of the letters had ever been sent, never been opened. I slit open the envelope carefully and unfolded the letter inside. My dearest Edward. Today marks 1 year since we stood together and promised to love each other for the rest of our lives. 1 year of marriage, of building our home together, of learning what it means to be husband and wife. As I write this, you're downstairs watching the baseball game, content and unaware of the thoughts swirling in my mind. That's the way it's been since that night 3 months ago, hasn't it? Life continuing on the surface while beneath, everything has shifted. Do you remember April 18th? The night of Peter and Susan's dinner party? I think about it constantly. The argument we had in the car on the way home. The things you said when you thought I couldn't hear you on the phone with Peter the next day. The decision I made in that moment, a decision that has shaped every day since. I decided that night to accept what our marriage would be, rather than what I had hoped it would be. To love you as you are, not as I wished you to be. To find happiness in what we have, rather than longing for what we don't. It was a turning point, though you never knew it. The moment I realized that the Edward I fell in love with and the Edward I married are the same person, complex, flawed, wonderful in so many ways, and yet not the partner I had imagined in my girlhood dreams. I won't send you this letter. Or any of the others I suspect I'll write in the years to come. What would be the point? You are happy. We are happy, in our way. Opening this door would only cause pain, and for what? Some abstract ideal of complete honesty? Some romantic notion of perfect understanding between husband and wife? No. I've made my choice. I choose us, as we are. I choose the good morning kisses and the comfortable silences. I choose your pride in your work and your love for our home. I choose the father you are to our children and the provider you are for our family. I choose to love you, Edward, with open eyes and a full heart. Not blindly, as a girl loves, but wisely, as a woman loves. Until next year, Catherine. I sat on the edge of the bed, letter in hand, a cold weight settling in my stomach. April 18, 1987. I strained to remember the dinner party she mentioned, the argument afterward. It came back in fragments: Peter and Susan's new house, too much wine, a disagreement about, what? Something trivial, surely. But what had I said to Peter the next day? What had Catherine overheard that had affected her so deeply? With growing unease, I opened the second letter, dated June 12, 1988. My dearest Edward. 2 years now. Michael is crawling everywhere, keeping us both busy and delighted. You're such a natural father, patient and playful in ways that sometimes surprise me, given how driven you are in your work. I've thought often about whether to continue these letters. They feel both necessary and futile. A record of my heart that no one will ever read. A confession without absolution. A conversation with myself, in the guise of speaking to you. The truth is, April 18th still haunts me. Not because what happened was so terrible, it wasn't, but because it revealed a fundamental truth about us. About how differently we see our marriage. About what you expect from me and what I had hoped for from you. When you told Peter that you couldn't understand why I was making such a big deal about your refusal to discuss our future, that you thought women just needed to accept that men aren't built for those kinds of conversations, it was like a window into your mind that I had never seen through before. And in that moment, I understood something profound: you didn't marry me for the same reasons I married you. You weren't looking for the kind of partnership I had envisioned. You wanted a wife who would support your ambitions, raise your children, maintain your home, and be satisfied with the security and comfort you provided in return. The irony is that you've given me exactly what you promised. You've never pretended to be something you're not. It was I who projected onto you my own desires for emotional intimacy, for a marriage of equals who share not just a home but their deepest selves. So I adapted. I found other outlets for those needs: my friendships, my volunteer work, my relationship with my sister. And I found a different kind of happiness than the one I had imagined. Not lesser, just different. I still love you, Edward. More deeply in some ways than when we married. But it's a love tempered by reality, shaped by compromise, sustained by choice rather than illusion. Until next year, Catherine. My hands were shaking now. I remembered the conversation with Peter, vaguely, the kind of thoughtless male bravado that seemed harmless at the time. But Catherine had heard it. And it had changed everything for her, though I'd noticed nothing. I spent the next several hours reading through all 35 letters. Each one referenced that same night, that same overheard conversation, that same silent agreement Catherine had made with herself to accept our marriage for what it was rather than what she had hoped it would be. The letters chronicled our life together through her eyes: the birth of our children, my career successes, our moves to different cities, the empty nest years, our retirement. Each milestone filtered through her private understanding of our relationship as something fundamentally compromised, fundamentally limited by my inability to be the partner she had truly wanted. Yet alongside this thread of resignation ran a parallel narrative of genuine love, appreciation, and contentment. She wrote of moments of unexpected connection, of gratitude for my steadfastness, of pride in the family we had built together. There was no bitterness in her words, no regret, only a clear-eyed acceptance of the marriage she had chosen to embrace, with all its imperfections. The final letter, dated just 2 months before her death, was the most difficult to read. My dearest Edward. 35 years. Sometimes it seems impossible that we've been together for more than 3 decades. Other times, I can hardly remember my life before you, before us. I had a checkup last week that left me a bit shaken. Nothing specific, just the doctor's offhand comment about keeping an eye on things at our age. It made me realize that our time together isn't infinite. One day, one of us will leave the other behind. The thought of you reading these letters after I'm gone fills me with a strange mixture of anxiety and peace. Would you understand, I wonder? Would you be hurt to learn that I carried this private narrative alongside our shared one all these years? Or would you recognize it as an act of love, my way of staying present and committed to our marriage when it would have been easier to grow bitter or leave? I hope you would see it as I do, not as a deception but as a gift I gave to both of us. The gift of acceptance. The gift of choosing love, day after day, year after year, even when that love didn't look exactly as I'd once imagined it would. Because here's what I've learned in 35 years, my love, no marriage is perfect. No partner is perfect. We all make our compromises, our silent agreements with ourselves about what we can live with and what we can't live without. What matters, in the end, is that I have never regretted choosing you. Not once in 35 years. Whatever dreams I set aside, whatever wishes remained unfulfilled, they pale in comparison to the life we've built together. The family we've created. The love, imperfect but enduring, that has seen us through good times and bad. So if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you found the record of my heart I've kept all these years. And if that's the case, please know this above all, I loved you, Edward. Wholly and without reservation. Not blindly, but with complete awareness of who you are. And I would choose you again, 1,000 times over. Forever yours, Catherine. I read the final letter 3 times, tears blurring my vision. Then I carefully folded it and returned it to its envelope, along with all the others. I placed them back in the wooden box, closed the lid, and sat in silence for a long time, trying to reconcile the marriage I thought I'd had with the one revealed in Catherine's letters. Had I really been so oblivious? So emotionally unavailable that my wife had made a conscious decision to accept a lesser connection than she had hoped for? The thought was both humbling and horrifying. Yet she had stayed. She had loved me. She had found happiness in our life together, even as she acknowledged its limitations. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying moments from our marriage, searching for signs I had missed. The quiet dinners when conversation lapsed into comfortable silence, had Catherine wished for deeper dialogue? The vacations where I was content to lie on the beach while she explored local museums and markets, had she longed for a more engaged companion? The decisions about our finances, our homes, our children's education that I had often taken the lead on, had she wished for more equal footing? I thought about the friends Catherine had cultivated over the years, the close relationships she maintained with her sister and her women's group from church. Had these been the emotional outlets she mentioned in her letters, the places where she found the deeper connection she couldn't find with me? In the morning, I called my daughter, Sarah. She lived just an hour away and had been checking in on me regularly since Catherine's death. "Dad? Is everything okay?" she asked when she heard my voice, concern evident in her tone. "I'm not sure," I said honestly. "I found something of your mother's yesterday. Letters she wrote to me but never gave me. About our marriage. I need to talk to someone about them." Sarah came over that afternoon. I showed her the wooden box but didn't let her read the letters. They were too private, too intimate a glimpse into her mother's heart. But I explained the gist of them: Catherine's decision early in our marriage to accept its limitations, her choice to find contentment within the boundaries of who I was capable of being as a partner. "Does that surprise you?" Sarah asked after I finished, her expression thoughtful. "Mom's perspective?" The question caught me off guard. "You knew about how she felt?" Sarah smiled gently. "Not specifically, no. Mom never spoke unkindly about you or your marriage. But it was observable, I guess. The dynamic between you." "What do you mean?" She considered her words carefully. "Dad, you're a wonderful father. You provided for us, protected us, supported us. But you've always been self-contained. Reserved, emotionally. Mom was different, warm, expressive, always wanting to talk things through. We all just understood that was the balance between you, she brought the emotional openness, you brought the stability. I felt a flush of shame. Did you think she was unhappy? No. Sarah said quickly. Not at all. Mom loved you deeply. Anyone could see that. And she seemed genuinely content with her life. But there were times, I remember once when I was about 16, going through typical teenage angst, and Mom sat with me for hours, talking through all my confused feelings. At one point she said something that stuck with me. She said, the people we love can't always give us everything we need. That's why we have friends, community, different types of relationships. No one person can be everything to another person. The secret to happiness is accepting people for who they are, not who we wish they could be. The words hit me like a physical blow. It was almost exactly what Catherine had written in her letters. She had been teaching our daughter the philosophy that had guided her own life, her own marriage. Did that seem sad to you? I asked. Sarah considered the question. No, not sad. Wise. Realistic. Mom wasn't a martyr, Dad. She wasn't sacrificing herself on the altar of marriage. She was making conscious choices about what mattered most to her. She reached across the table and took my hand. And you were what mattered most. Your marriage. The family you built together. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. After a moment, Sarah continued. Mom chose you every day for 35 years. That's not settling. That's commitment. That's love. After Sarah left, I took the box of letters up to my study. I spent the next several days reading and rereading them, trying to understand the woman who had written them, who, in many ways, seemed like a stranger to me now. A woman with deeper thoughts, stronger convictions, and a more complex inner life than I had ever fully appreciated. One passage from her 10th anniversary letter kept returning to me. What I've come to realize is that there are many kinds of intimacy. You and I may not share the kind of emotional transparency I once dreamed of, but we have built other connections that are just as meaningful. The way you still reach for my hand in the car, without thinking. The private joke we share whenever Michael starts one of his long-winded stories. The quiet mornings when we move around each other in the kitchen, not speaking but perfectly in sync. These are their own kind of intimacy, their own kind of love language. Had I truly been present for those moments? Had I recognized them for the gifts they were? Or had I taken them for granted, just as I had taken Catherine herself for granted? I thought about the routines of our daily life together. The cup of coffee she would place by my newspaper every morning. The way she would rest her feet in my lap while we watched TV in the evenings. The Sunday drives to nowhere in particular, comfortable in shared silence. I had enjoyed these rituals without reflecting on their meaning, their place in the architecture of our relationship. 2 weeks after finding the letters, I finally contacted Michael, our son. Unlike Sarah, who had settled just an hour away, Michael lived on the opposite coast with his wife and 2 sons. We had a good relationship, but like me, he was not naturally effusive. Our conversations tended to focus on practical matters and surface-level updates. When I told him about the letters, he was quiet for a long moment. Mom always said you were exactly who you presented yourself to be, he finally said. No pretense, no false promises. She respected that about you. But did she wish I was different? I pressed. Dad, Michael said with a gentleness that reminded me of his mother, everyone wishes their spouse was different in some ways. That's just human nature. What matters is whether the differences are things you can live with. And your mother could live with mine, I said, the realization both comforting and painful. More than that, Michael said. She built a life she loved with you. One she wouldn't have traded for any other. Over the following months, I continued to process the revelations in Catherine's letters. I spoke with a grief counselor, trying to untangle my feelings about a marriage that now seemed simultaneously more beautiful and more complicated than I had understood. Your wife made a conscious choice to focus on the positive aspects of your relationship, the counselor told me. That doesn't invalidate her choice or suggest your marriage was a sham. Many successful long-term relationships involve this kind of acceptance. But should I have been different? I asked. Better? More emotionally available? The counselor smiled gently. Would that have been authentic to who you are? Catherine seems to have valued your authenticity, even with its limitations. Trying to be someone you're not rarely leads to sustainable happiness in a relationship. I wasn't entirely convinced. There was a difference, surely, between pretending to be someone you're not and growing into a better version of yourself. Had I missed opportunities for that kind of growth because I was comfortable, because Catherine had adapted to me rather than challenging me? 6 months after Catherine's death, I finally felt ready to visit her grave. It was a crisp autumn day, her favorite season. I brought a bouquet of sunflowers, bright and straightforward, like her smile. As I stood by the simple granite marker bearing her name, I felt a profound sense of both loss and discovery. I had lost the woman I had shared my life with for 35 years. But I was also discovering her in a new way, through the window her letters had opened into her heart and mind. I wish I had known, I said aloud, my voice breaking the cemetery silence. I wish you had told me what you were thinking, what you were feeling. Maybe I could have been more, maybe we could have been more. But even as I said the words, I wondered if that was true. Would I have understood at 31 what I barely grasped now at 67? Would I have been able to see beyond my own perspective, my own needs and expectations, to truly meet Catherine where she was? A memory surfaced, Catherine at our 30th anniversary dinner, raising her glass in a toast. To 30 years of choosing each other, she had said, her eyes meeting mine with warmth and a depth I had always sensed but never fully fathomed. Every day, a choice. Every year, a gift. I had assumed she was speaking generally, romantically, about marriage as a commitment. Now I understood she had been referring to her own specific, conscious choice, the choice she made that April night in 1987 and remade every day for 35 years. As I placed the sunflowers on her grave, I made a decision. I would honor Catherine's choice by ensuring that it had not been in vain. I would become the kind of father, grandfather, and friend who could talk about feelings, who could listen deeply, who could be present emotionally in the ways I had struggled to be as a husband. It was too late for Catherine, but not too late for Sarah, for Michael, for my grandchildren. Not too late to grow, to change, to expand my capacity for connection. Back at home, I took out a sheet of stationery and began to write. My dearest Catherine. It has been 6 months since you left me, and 1 month since I found your letters. I've read them all, many times over, trying to understand the woman I thought I knew better than anyone in the world. I wish I could say I'm surprised by what I read, that the distance you felt between us was entirely imagined. But that would be dishonest, and if there's anything your letters have taught me, it's the value of honesty, even when that honesty is only with oneself. The truth is, I always knew there was a part of you I couldn't reach. A depth to your thoughts and feelings that remained separate from our shared life. I told myself this was normal, that all marriages have their unexplored territories. But now I wonder if I was simply avoiding my own inadequacy, my inability to meet you fully, to be the partner you had initially hoped for. I'm sorry, Catherine. Sorry that I never created the space for you to share these thoughts directly. Sorry that I was content with the surface when you yearned for depth. Sorry that you had to make that choice on April 18, 1987, to accept less than what you had dreamed of in a marriage. Yet I find myself grateful, too. Grateful that you chose me, chose us, despite everything. Grateful for 35 years of your love, your patience, your wisdom. Grateful that you found a way to be happy within the marriage we had, rather than pining for the one we didn't. I'm trying to learn from you, even now. To understand that love is indeed a choice, not just at the altar, but every day thereafter. To recognize that acceptance doesn't mean settling, but rather seeing clearly and choosing anyway. I miss you more than words can express. Not just the comfortable routines we shared, but the woman I now realize I never fully knew, the woman who wrote those thoughtful, honest, loving letters year after year, never sending them but never abandoning the reflection they represented. If there is any consolation in this loss, it's that you have given me one final gift, a clearer vision of both who you were and who I have been. And perhaps a road map for who I might yet become. Forever yours, Edward. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in an envelope, which I addressed simply to Catherine. I didn't take it to the cemetery, that seemed too theatrical, not authentic to either of us. Instead, I placed it in the wooden box with her 35 letters, a final correspondence in a conversation that had spanned a lifetime, even if much of it had been unspoken. In the months and years that followed, I kept my promise to myself and to Catherine's memory. I called Michael more often, asking about his feelings as well as his accomplishments. I had long, meandering conversations with Sarah about her hopes, her fears, her inner life. I got to know my grandchildren as individuals, not just extensions of my children. It wasn't always comfortable. Old habits die hard, and emotional expressiveness didn't come naturally to me even with practice. But I persisted, motivated by the knowledge that Catherine had seen more in me than I had seen in myself, potential for growth, for connection, for a deeper kind of love than I had allowed myself to experience. On what would have been our 40th anniversary, I sat alone in my living room, a glass of the Cabernet we had always shared on special occasions in hand. I toasted the empty chair across from me, where Catherine should have been. To 40 years of choosing each other, I said, echoing her words from a decade earlier. Every day, a choice. Every year, a gift. And in the quiet of the room, in the gentle evening light that Catherine had always loved, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Not the peace of forgetting, but the peace of understanding. Not the peace of perfect resolution, but the peace of acceptance, the same acceptance Catherine had practiced all those years. Our marriage had not been perfect. I had not been the partner she had initially dreamed of. But in her wisdom, Catherine had recognized a fundamental truth that I was only now beginning to grasp: perfection is not the goal of love. Presence is. Commitment is. The daily choice to see each other clearly and stay anyway. In her final letter, Catherine had written that she would choose me again, 1,000 times over. As I sat in the gathering dusk, I knew with certainty that I would choose her too, not the idealized wife of a young man's imagination, but the complex, wise, loving woman who had written those 35 letters. The woman who had taught me, even in her absence, what it truly means to love.